Americans care a lot about money. We talk about jobs and taxes and paychecks, but here's what we don't talk about. Right here in the United States, there is a thriving underground economy based on selling children for sex. If sex sells, then business is good. Look at all the money. It was almost $1 billion in this study. But these dirty profits come at a huge cost. This is how sex traffickers do business. It's about supply and demand. First, they need someone to sell. Traffickers target children in their own homes. They find them by combing through social media profiles, looking to spark a conversation. The trafficker targets preteens and teens by finding an end, something to bond over and earn their trust. It could be the promise of a modeling career. They might buy them drugs or alcohol, or provide protection from an already dangerous situation at home. Traffickers gain psychological control and use violent threats to force victims to stay. Once the child is isolated from family and friends, the trafficker puts them up for sale. This is where the demand comes in. Traffickers use internet sites to connect with buyers or Johns, but calling them Johns is too polite. They are abusers. They are purchasing kids for sex. So who are these buyers? Court records show they've been teachers, pastors, cops, and judges. They could be the guy next door. The trafficker gets the money. The buyer gets sex. The child victim gets exploited and sold. So how is this different from prostitution, pornography, or other sexual acts? These victims are minors. Legally, they cannot consent. This isn't the movies. It's not like Pretty Woman or Taken. Richard Gere is not the buyer. Liam Neeson isn't there to save the day. This is sexual exploitation. This is trafficking. This is modern-day slavery. It's selling girls.
You go from working the internet to casinos to bars to walking down the street. It can be anywhere. I've seen it happen actually in county markets.
There are, on any given day in America, over 300,000 runaway or homeless kids living in the streets, and they are vulnerable.
You know, there's these older men that take these kids that are either runaways or addicts or, you know, just someone that wants quick cash or whatever, you know, and they use them to their advantage.
12, 13-year-olds don't raise their hand in the classroom and say, this is what I want to be when I grow up. Okay, somebody pushes them into that.
And it's so out there, but everybody just closes a blind eye to it because nobody wants to admit that, oh yeah, we got a problem too.
Human trafficking is happening here.
Before this, I thought trafficking was in foreign countries or maybe New York or California or maybe in Mexico for farming or something. I mean, not in Wisconsin.
In labor trafficking, common risk factors include immigration status, low levels of education, a debt that needs to be paid off, or being economically disadvantaged. In many cases, labor trafficking victims are brought into a job under false pretenses and kept there through threats and violence. With sex trafficking, common risk factors include a history of previous abuse or exploitation, substance use, homelessness, mental illness, involvement in the commercial sex industry, and low socioeconomic status. With child sex trafficking, common risk factors are running away or homelessness, child sexual abuse, chronic abuse or neglect, identification as LGBTQ, learning disabilities, low socioeconomic status, developmental or cognitive delays, promotion of sexual exploitation by family members or peers, and a lack of personal safety, isolation, emotional distress, substance abuse, mental illness, and a lack of social support. One group that's often under-recognized in child sex trafficking is boys. Male sex trafficking victims may have an even lower chance of identification. Our culture often pictures males as perpetrators of sex crimes and females as victims of sex crimes. And there may even be a greater stigma or felt shame for boy victims that keeps them from reaching out. A study published by Love 146 indicated that male minors may comprise almost half of the commercially sexually exploited youth in our country, but they often go unidentified.
It can happen in somebody that goes to church. It can happen in a middle-class family or upper-class family. It can happen in all regions.
This isn't an urban or a rural problem. It's everywhere.
First, we have to understand that human trafficking, like all industries generating profit, is about supply and demand. We know that the supply side of human trafficking is the victims, the people who are used and exploited. The demand side is the buyers, the people who are seeking to pay for the services provided by victims. And the person in the middle is the trafficker. The trafficker is a person who, through force, fraud, or coercion, is providing the victim to the buyer.
But they use social media in order to start relationships, start friendships, or start dating relationships online in order to gain trust, which then allows them to manipulate their victim. And this is something that's called recruitment or grooming. So grooming is gaining trust of that person and slowly pushing their boundaries and manipulating them until they'll do what it is that they want you to do.
So who are these sex traffickers? In sex trafficking, a trafficker may be better known as a pimp. Now take a minute and think about what comes to mind when you think of the word pimp. I'm about to show you a group of photos. Take 10 seconds and decide who you think the pimp is. You may have guessed it, but all of these people have been arrested for sex trafficking. In 2018, a Travis County, Texas woman conspired with her boyfriend to traffic a 14-year-old girl, lured the girl through Tagged, a social media app, used threats of force to make her perform sex acts, is now serving 40 years in prison. In 2018, a Houston, Texas man was running a massage business out of his home using a 15-year-old boy to give massages to clients. Paying customers were allowed to engage in sexual activities with that boy. He did this to multiple boys. He's now serving a 30-year prison sentence. In 2016, a Waco man who was 51 years old harbored a 15-year-old runaway girl and charged men to have sex with her while keeping her high on heroin. He's now serving 12 consecutive life sentences. In 2018, a junior high teacher in a small town, Mahia, Texas, was accused of posting nude photos of her underage family member and arranging for multiple men in Morocco to have sex with her. In 2019, a former District of Columbia police officer who met two 9th grade girls online, 14 and 15 years old, paid them to have sex with him. He pointed a gun at one of the girls, demanding his money back after she performed a sexual act. He's now serving 10 to 20 years in prison. From 2012 to 2015, a woman sold her 10-year-old daughter to a businessman multiple times over several years. He promised to pay the victim's tuition and provided the mother with expensive electronics and other gifts. As disturbing as it is to hear stories like this, these types of cases are really happening in the communities around America. These stories remind us that traffickers come in many forms. They could be from the United States or they could be from another country. They could be family members or partners of the victims or total strangers. Traffickers can be male or female. They could be individuals, part of an organized group, or gangs.
I was born and raised in a small town in Southern Oregon, and I was a good kid in school. I grew up in a normal middle-class family. I got great grades. I was really active in sports, and I even graduated a year early. I was accepted into Oregon State University, and I had my dorm room already assigned, and I was really excited to move up to Corvallis. But that summer I got pregnant by my boyfriend, and I had to make a real tough decision whether I was going to keep my baby and unenroll from university or get an abortion and keep it all a secret. And that was a really tough summer for me. After I had the baby, I had some friends that had gone up to U of O to go to college, and they had an extra room in one of their apartments. It was at that time that I met a boy or a guy who pretended to take interest in me. I really thought he liked me, and we got along really well. He was really funny and charming, and he had a nice car, and he always picked up the tab. He had nice clothes. He told me he was a record producer, that he had a band up in Portland, and that's why he frequently went out of town. There's a saying that says when you take a child by the hand, you take the mother by the heart. And I really think that's what happened for me, because I had this new little girl and this man who showed this desperate attention towards her, like he wanted to really help make this family that I really wanted for my daughter. And he invited me to move in with him after about 6 months of dating, and I was really excited. And I brought him down to Southern Oregon to meet my family, and everything seemed fine until we arrived in Las Vegas. He said we were moving there because that was the entertainment capital of the world, and being a record producer and having a band, that's where they were going to get the most gigs and the most jobs, and that's where his job was leading him. So I desperately wanted to go with him, to be with him, and to start this family that he promised me. He pulled up to an escort service, and he said, "This is how it works in Vegas. I've spent a lot of money to get you here. I put first and last on an apartment. I filled your fridge up with food, and you're gonna need to earn that money back." And I felt trapped. I felt like, how am I gonna get out of this? And you didn't know if you were gonna live or die. You didn't know what he was gonna do or what he was capable of, and so it was really scary. I can remember just running through the casino thinking, like, these people don't even have a clue what's going on. They're just, cha-ching, cha-ching, Las Vegas, yay! And they're doing all this stuff, and I'm running for my life. I'm running from a man that has forced me into doing things that I didn't want to do. When you have a trafficker that's waiting at home with your child and says, if you don't bring home $1,500, you're going to find your daughter out on the corner, I think I was probably more frightened to go home than I was to be in the room. Because if you got robbed, it was your fault for being stupid. If you got raped, it was your fault for not watching your back. Anything that happened to you was typically your fault, and you incurred more punishment for allowing those things to happen to you. So it made you always walk in fear of your trafficker.
Human trafficking is one of the forms of trauma that, when you really understand what people are going through and what is being done to them, if you believe in any kind of existential philosophy, I think it is as close to true evil as I have ever seen in my work with people who have been harmed by other people. And I do a lot of work in interpersonal violence.
Every girl is at risk simply because they are a girl. We want all girls educated in the risks about relationships, just like we believe all girls should be educated and have knowledge about human trafficking, so they know what to do. So it's important to have that conversation with girls, not just sweep it under the carpet, never my girl, never her.
There's something unique about the violation of the body. And when I teach about human trafficking, one of the things I talk about is how the body is actually the scene of the crime. So because it is a violation of one's physical person through sexual behavior, there's actually no way to escape it. You can't get away, you can't wash it off, you cannot forget, you cannot get out. You actually take the violated body with you into your new life if you are ever lucky enough to escape human trafficking.
So there's various ways that a girl can be recruited. A lot of ways that we see is what we call boyfriending. So the young girl meets a guy who you know, she describes as her boyfriend. Guy can build trust, and then he can start to demand things of her. If you loved me, you would do this. And she will 100% believe and describe him as her boyfriend, but in reality, he is pimping her out, and that's probably one of the major ways. And, you know, sometimes they're too afraid to say anything because of judgment from parents and people that are close to them. What would they say?
And so for me, it's such a painful but passionate piece of work.
Because they're going to try to gain your trust. They are very patient. Traffickers are very patient. They will wait years of gaining trust in order to then manipulate and exploit you. So you need to watch who you're talking to online, making sure that that person is who they say they are. If they're saying that they're a 14-year-old teenage boy, then you need to make sure that that's who they are, because sometimes they're not. You have to be practicing social media safety. You cannot just be airing everything out.
You want water or anything? I'm a federal agent and I work for Homeland Security Investigations. There was one file that was interesting to us that you had, and it's something that we've only seen 3 times before. It was a PDF document.
Which one?
It was a PDF document, and it was many, many pages, and it was talking about the ways in which to show a child love in a sexual way, but doing it safely without hurting them.
New tonight, predators targeting social media websites.
A spike in children being targeted. Human traffickers are turning to popular websites
the
to do
average
their...
age, 14, 15, 16 is the age that we're seeing.
They are using this pandemic as an avenue. They know that these kids are home, they're bored.
In the United States, people comfort themselves by saying, well, that's not me, that's just in very, very remote, poor areas. It's in every area. The only difference is it's undercover.
A lot of the time we're taught that trafficking is you being thrown into a van and somebody kidnaps you and then you're never seen again, when it's actually a lot more subtle than that.
I'm not gonna go stand at a corner at a mall because that's just too creepy, right? But I'm gonna be online, I'm gonna follow people.
I didn't think it was as dangerous as it was. Someone on the internet, how's that gonna affect our children? You know, they're here with us.
It seemed like we were dating, so I was like, okay, well, I guess we're in a relationship, so this is okay.
The boyfriend pimp or the Romeo pimp, where they use manipulation and love to lure the victims in.
He decided to ask me for some inappropriate pictures. I was 12 at the time.
We've had a few of them where somebody be controlling the kids from somewhere else, and they're charging other people to watch this child. That's trafficking right there.
I started digging deeper, and these people are everywhere. They had multiple fake accounts, and they're trying to talk to my daughter through this kid that is asking for nudes.
It was scary. It was really scary to think that that happens here at home.
The reality is that kids are getting hurt. Once you see the scale of it, over 100,000 in the United States, when you understand that it's kids from all walks of life, then you feel like you have to do something about it.
The way my daughter Haley was acting was the first clue that something was up. She got quiet. She was more secretive. We caught her up late all the time. We kind of had a no tablet in your room rule, and she would sneak it, or we would find it in the morning in her room, or we would find her on her sister's because we grounded her from hers. I mean, there was definitely like she needed to have her tablet, and that was just kind of odd.
My dad was like, okay, something's definitely off, and he would go through my tablet on a regular basis, but I was being so secretive to the point that I would delete messages that were on there so he couldn't tell what we were talking about, and then didn't realize that pictures get backed up to like an SD card on your tablet once you delete them out of a conversation. So he found it that way.
Haley had expressed to her sister that she had this boyfriend named Bruce, and her younger sister came to us and said, hey, Haley has a boyfriend, you know, his name is Bruce. And that's where I think it all started.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, she's 12.
That's right.
She has a boyfriend? Who is this Bruce?
My instant reaction to that was Bruce. I was like, no one names their children Bruce these days. So I was like, is Bruce a man? So that's when I started digging deeper, and it just carried on. There were certain individuals following Bruce with fake accounts. They had fake screenshotted pictures for their profile picture, and you could just tell they were fake. I mean, they just looked wrong. And all the pictures on their page were like screenshotted furniture. So then I would go to the next guy, and he had almost the exact same layout pictures, but a different name, different face. So I'm like, how does this person know this person? And why are they sending my daughter messages? I go, how are you? You know, do you want to talk? I copy and pasted their email address and started looking in Google, trying to figure out who these people were. You know, I emailed them. I didn't get any response, of course. Actually, 2 of them, I got the mailer errors saying that the account was closed. And so that's when I was like, okay, this is really suspicious. These people are multiple fake accounts, and they're trying to talk to my daughter through this kid that is asking for nudes. And that's when we decided to maybe take it to the police, because it got a little out of our hands.
Worst place for a child to be is in their room, unsupervised, on a computer with full access to the internet and all of the traffickers out there.
Would you let your kid go bar hopping at night? Would you let your 13, 14-year-old daughter or son go out on a Friday night and go clubbing? Oh, never. Never. Good. But would you let them close their bedroom door and have internet access for that same amount of time on a Friday night? We've had cases where mom and dad shocked and have no idea that their daughter is doing shows on a live cam, you know, and getting paid money to take her clothes off.
Some people will acknowledge that human trafficking is going on here, but they just assume that it's only in impoverished neighborhoods. But I think my story is a prime example of how that's not true, because I grew up in the typical middle-class home. I was raised in church, and it happened to me.
The tactics of traffickers can be broken down into 4 main themes. First, violence. Traffickers may use violence or threats of violence against their victim or a victim's loved one. Second, lies or false promises. Traffickers may tell the victim that they are going to get a good job in a restaurant, only to discover it's actually sex work. Traffickers may paint a dream of money, success, and freedom as bait. We've seen several situations where a pimp convinces a girl to work in a strip club to save up money and gain confidence for a modeling career. Soon after, the pimp forces her into selling sex. Traffickers may also befriend their victim, working to gain their trust. The trafficker may help the victim out, buying them what they want or need. Over time, however, the trafficker may start convincing the victim that they owe them and need to give something back. Lastly, traffickers may use romance to gain the love and devotion of the victim. According to Polaris Project, this tactic, called boyfriending, is the most common way traffickers initiate a relationship with a potential victim.
I was trafficked actually just a couple doors down from my grandmother's. I was at her house fairly often, and it was just kind of like wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. And this younger boy had gotten involved in an organized crime group that was trafficking children all over the Chicagoland area. And basically the way it worked was these young boys recreated R. Kelly's sex tape that was going around the suburbs of Chicago at that time. And they used that to advertise me in the community. And whenever I happened to be over at my grandmother's, so this mostly happened in the summers when I was spending a lot of time there, they would somehow communicate to buyers that I was available. I would assume that I was going to the highest bidder, and then I would be told to come over to the house, and I was gone for only 30 to 45 minutes max, probably not even that long. And men from all over my community were coming to rape me. And you would never think, seeing them on the street, that they would be capable of something like that. Most of them came in, they took off a suit jacket, they had a ring on. They seemed like totally normal, average people. No one had that weird, you know, living in my mom's basement vibe or anything like that. So I think a lot of people have a lot of stereotypes around this, and it's because of those stereotypes that it can exist well in America.
Another group guilty of human trafficking is recruiters. A recruiter is used by a trafficker to find potential victims. These recruiters often seek out vulnerabilities that make a person easier to manipulate. Things like low self-esteem, history of abuse, running away from home, or unsupervised internet access increase a young person's vulnerability. Recruiters look for their victims in places where youth are often unsupervised. They might hang out at malls and parks, befriend youth in schools or local libraries, meet runaway youth at a bus stop, youth shelters, or online. Even though a recruiter isn't the person directly selling or trafficking the victim, according to the law, they are still guilty of human trafficking. So we know traffickers and recruiters do what they do so they can make a profit. But who's driving the demand? The buyers. Like traffickers, buyers also come in many forms. Over the years, I've arrested more than 450 buyers in human trafficking stings. I've picked up buyers as young as 17 years old and as old as 75. They come from every segment of society. They are married and single, businessmen, doctors, construction workers, and the unemployed, just passing through, or prominent community members. Most buyers are there because they, 1, think it's a victimless crime, 2, think they won't get caught, and 3, have a sex addiction or feel unable to get their sexual needs met in any appropriate way. But the truth is this: there are very real victims whose lives are being destroyed through their actions. There are law enforcement like me looking to hold them accountable. Exploiting another person is never an acceptable way to have your needs met. A lot of these buyers also admit that the chain of events that led them to seeking to buy sex, and especially for those seeking sex with a minor, all started with an addiction to pornography.
I originally grew up in a very small town called Navasota in Texas. I didn't actually come out to my family. My parents went through my cell phone one day. At this time, I'm 15 years old. My father said, "I'm only going to ask you one more time, are you gay?" And I said, I'm not. And the second I said that to him, I got a fist to my face and I blacked out, hit the floor, and he kicked me into my abdomen. I got up, dialed 911 on our home phone, and he smacked the phone out of my hand. I didn't feel safe. And I remember thinking that if I had a relationship with someone who's older, they'll be able to protect me and they'll be able to give me the support and the love that I haven't been given my entire life. The first night, Jason treated me amazing. We went to lunch, we had dinners, and then the routine changed a little bit. He said, "One day you're going to want to live a life on your own, and I think it'd be a great idea if you got a head start." And he said, "I'm a registered massage therapist. I think it would be great if you gave massages with me." We had our first appointment set. The first thing I notice is the client has no clothing on, and he's not under the sheeting that was provided. And then Jason began to take his clothing off. And I knew I had to take my clothes off. As the massages continued, they began to get more and more aggressive. I remember when things started getting to a point to where I had zero control over what happened to me. I had so many dreams. I had so many goals. There were so many things that I wanted to do. And suddenly I'm in this place where I'm not able to do any of it. Yeah. I'd probably say like half an inch we could take off and it'll be fine.
Let's see, yeah.
Slowly but surely, I started to notice that I had to start taking care of myself. I had to find solid ground because I just felt like I was going to die from this feeling that I had. And I began working out with a trainer. The stronger that my body became, the stronger my mind became. And I slowly started to let go of the anxiety. I am a full-time hairstylist here in Boston, Massachusetts.
Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like, but by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos, using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older, and I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems, such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, make frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating for them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys.
So while there are quite a few signs of human traffickers, here are 5 signs that you need to look out for. They have promises that are way too good to be true. They shower you with overwhelming love and gifts and attention that's unhealthy, especially for different points in your relationship. Number 3 is that they control your identification, your cell phones, your actions, your locations, who you're with, where you're going. They control every aspect. Number 4 is that they speak and are possessive over the people that they're with, specifically their own victims. They're very possessive. They do not let them talk, do not let them have a mind of their own or a say or a voice, so beware of that one. And number 5, the most important, is they use social media to gain your trust in order to manipulate you later. So remember to practice social media safety anytime that you're on. Always, always double check who you're talking to, and if they make you feel uncomfortable, don't be afraid to block them.
To request help or report possible human trafficking incidents, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-3737-888, or text info or help at BeFree 233-733.